Hey there guys, Artistic Nick here, thanks for the click. In today's drawing tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to draw Boba Fett from the Star Wars universe. This is a drawing I did quite a while ago now. It's one of my favourite drawings that I've done since I've actually started with any of the artwork that I've recently been doing. This took me about 25 hours to complete, and I've recently had a few requests from you guys on the community just asking how I shade. I know I've been doing an awful lot of work recently with the Copic markers and the coloured pencils, but I think when you're asking me how we shade, I think you're referring to working with graphite. So I thought I would narrate this video and just talk you through the process that I'm going through. So as always, I'm using my Caran D'ache pencils for this, and I'm using 5 pencils. I'm going from a 4H to a 2H, and then using an HB, a 2B, and finally a 4B. The paper that I'm using, which is very important, is I'm using a Strathmore Bristol, and this is the vellum paper. For the marker work, I actually use the Strathmore Bristol Smooth. Now the difference between the two is the vellum paper is slightly toothier, and what this means is the texture of the paper is slightly rougher. When you're working with graphite, you want that tooth of the paper there so that the graphite does come away from the pencil and gives you this much more evenly spread kind of look to it. Almost, I think when I do some of these graphite works, that it almost looks like it's been powdered on. I'm not going too hard at all. So I'm going to basically talk you through the process and hopefully it makes a lot of sense to some of you. If not, if you've got any questions, then don't forget, just fire them across to me in the comments below. Don't forget to hook up with me on social media. All of the links to my platforms are down below in the descriptions. So what I'm doing then is I'm starting off with my lightest pencil, which is my 4H, and I'm working in the darkest areas. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm pulling the pencil towards me. I'm never pushing away and I'm never scribbling. I'm laying down the lightest colour of pencil to begin with, because what this does, because there's smaller flecks of graphite that come off with a harder pencil, as in the 4H, you're going to start to fill the lower parts of the tooth of the paper, the pits of the paper. And by gradually building the values up, finally up to your 4B, you're never going to be left with these white potholes and white marks in your work. So I go for the darkest areas, and I always build up from the darkest areas. I've heard a few artists out there saying that they like to work from the lightest areas to the darkest areas. I never ever do this. And the reason that I never work from the lightest to the darkest is because if I work from the lightest areas and I bring the value up too much, I then have to go extremely dark in the darker areas. Whereas if I work in the darkest areas, once I'm happy with the tone and the value that I have there, I can then work into the lighter areas and leave less value to be put down. Once I feel that I've got to the extent of the pencil that I'm working with, without pressing too hard, and I really can't stress this enough to you guys, we are using a very light toucher here. If you damage the tooth of the paper by scoring it with the pencil, you will be unable to take it out with an eraser. You will also get what we call graphite shine. A lot of artists like to work with charcoal because you don't get this graphite shine. And this is basically because graphite is a much smoother textured material, I guess, for want of a better word, and if you press too hard, everything's lying flat and you get this shine. So by pressing very softly, what happens is you build the values up gradually. So once I've moved from my 4H to my 2H, I then go into, again, the darkest areas with the HB and then the 2B, and I make sure that I only use the 4B at the very end of my drawing for the darkest areas. If you're looking for realism in your drawing, the most important thing is that you have contrast between your darkest and your lightest areas. If you look at a black and white photograph, there will be areas that are almost black, and certainly black in some areas, and some areas that are extremely light. If you're able to balance your values and make sure that your darkest areas on the photo reference are the darkest areas on your image and the lightest areas are the same, they're the lightest areas, then you will trick the brain of the observer into believing that what they're seeing is a photograph or something realistic. It's how we make things look rounded and with definition. So I can't stress enough to you guys, when you are working with graphite, do not press too hard. Do not start with a very dark pencil. What you'll also notice is I'm not actually using any implements to blend. I'm not using a blending stump. I'm not using a tissue or a Q-tip. What I like to do is if I need to, is I will brush the graphite in occasionally with a brush. For the majority of this drawing, I didn't feel the need to do that. So what I'm using is simply the graphite of the pencils only. It does take a long time, but if you're looking for a realistic portrait or a picture of, whatever it is, an animal that you're drawing, or in this case, a Star Wars character, then this is the best method for realism. They not only look real on camera and on photographs, but they look realistic in real life. I have 3 pictures up in my house of my girls that I've drawn, and they look like photographs until you get extremely close to them, when you can see that they are actually made by drawing. You'll notice that the reference image keeps popping into the frame. I like to always have a reference image there, just simply so that I can keep my eye on track and make sure that I know that I'm lining things up. I'm really enjoying this channel, guys. Thank you so much for your requests. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you've subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. If not, why don't you subscribe? We're not far away from completion on this, so I just want to thank you guys for sending your requests in. All of your likes, comments and shares are greatly appreciated. It makes a huge difference to the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.